The world ended, not with a bang, but with the silent spread of the Hino virus. I was already drowning in grief over the loss of my children, ready to surrender to the devastation. But Travis, my quiet, handsome neighbor, refused to let me fall. Through his relentless strength and the innocent presence of his little girl Lucy, he gave me a terrifying yet precious gift, a new reason to live, and the hard truth that I was strong enough to survive. Chapter 1. The Unraveling. Oh, I heard he is getting married in the Greek islands. He made sure he took the kids with him too. I hear that he is planning to take them away from her. Poor Portia hasn't been the same in quite a while. A woman, Lois, whispers conspiratorially, yet loudly, in a saccharine tone. I'm standing in the pasta aisle, hearing my neighbors dissect my life and turn it into cheap fodder. The fluorescent supermarket lights buzz above, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, a mundane stage for my humiliation. And the drinking, oh, she tries to hide it. But we all see how she has let herself go. It's just a divorce. She should get over it and move on. She is definitely not the first woman who has gone through it. Maybe if she paid more attention to Chuck, he wouldn't have strayed. Worse yet, she could have at least noticed his affair. I mean, it was plain for everyone to see, but she couldn't help herself. Going back to college to get her degree, like she is a mom now, isn't that enough? Another one, Mary comments, her voice dripping with self-righteous judgment. I know the two women who are speaking. I once considered them friends. Our kids played together. I carpooled with them. Now Lois and Mary. They can't even keep their damn voices down. I hear a person behind me place things in their cart a little too loudly. They basically tossed a can. I startle and spin around. My embarrassment heightens when I realize who it is. Travis Meadows. His house faces mine. He and his wife moved into our neighborhood 5 years ago after he left the Marines and set up his own private security firm. His wife died a year later in a car accident coming from a Pilates class, leaving him with a newborn. For some time I remember I would help him with the groceries and take him some meals when he was grieving and struggling. My life had been perfect then, organized, predictable. Little did I know that my husband of 4 years had already been having an affair with one of his workers. Now, I stand face to face with a man I once pitied. He looks well and has his shit together, while I don't even think I've taken a bath since my kids left to attend their father's wedding with said co-worker in Greece. He stares at me with an unsettling flicker of pity in his steely blue eyes. He has heard everything. Lois and Mary continue to talk about me, their voices still loud, and my cheeks burn with a painful, deep humiliation. My eyes fall to my cart, which is filled with an absurd mix of junk food and bottles of cheap wine. I nod quickly, a jerky movement of acknowledgement, and practically flee toward the checkout line. Home. Unwelcome. When I get home, I release a shuddering breath of relief. I catch my reflection in the large mirror in my foyer. As someone who had always been deeply proud of my appearance and looks, that large mirror was something I enjoyed looking at before I stepped out of the house or came back in with satisfaction. I look at my reflection now, and I look like a derelict. My blonde hair is a rat's nest, matted and all over the place. I'm wearing the stained pajamas my kids had last seen me in before Chuck took them away. I release a breath I had been unknowingly holding and walk heavily to the kitchen, placing my purchase on the cold granite counter. My eyes sweep across the living area. The place is a disaster zone of old takeout containers and scattered cushions. In 2 days, Luke and Daisy will be back. I can't have them come back to this mess. My eyes fall to the bottles of wine in the grocery bag. After a short, half-hearted debate, I decide to pop open a bottle and fill a glass. I can work and still enjoy a glass of wine. Slowly, I begin to clean up. I pick up and straighten until, one empty bottle later, my house looks clean, and I can hear the laundry spinning, a mechanical rhythm of normalcy. I find myself standing naked in the middle of the room, a moment of profound, vacant clarity. Then, I decide to go and take a much-needed shower. Lois and Mary's words were harsh, but I hate to admit that I have been a mess since the divorce. Chuck leaving and his affair were a crushing blow I never expected. I sit on my bed, running a comb through my long, damp hair as I call Luke's phone. He answers it, and a genuine, fragile smile comes to my face. His 8-year-old face is a gentle combination of me and Chuck. His sprinkling of freckles, he gets from his father. Hey baby, I greet him, my voice instantly softening. Hey mom, he waves back. He looks to be on the beach. The background is bright blue and sandy. Oh, you look like you are having fun, I say, meticulously maintaining a cheerful, light tone. He nods, and a little girl appears next to him. My heart swells with a sharp, sweet ache. Hey Angel, I greet Daisy. Hey mommy. Do you miss me? Her childish voice, clear as a bell, asks, and I nod fiercely. More than you could imagine, I tell them, holding back the sudden sting of tears. We miss you too, mommy. I can't wait to have you guys back. Just 2 sleeps and you'll be here. 2 sleeps, Luke nods, And Daisy agrees emphatically. After they tell me about all the adventures and sights they've been seeing, we finally hang up. I'm left lying in bed, happy to have seen my kids but heavy with a lingering sadness. I head to the kitchen to open a new bottle of wine, when I hear a sharp knock on the front door. I'm still in my silk dressing gown when I walk to the door and find Travis and his daughter standing on the porch. I had opened it unconsciously, without thinking who it might be. "Hey," he greets me, his expression unreadable. "Hey Travis." "Hey Lucy," I greet them, forcing a brittle smile onto my face. They answer, and there is a short, uncomfortable silence. Then he breaks it. Lucy and I were making pasta, and sort of overdid it. We thought you might like some." Lucy, a charming 4-year-old, has her head tilted up to see the adults and nods enthusiastically. "Oh, thanks," I say, taking the covered dish from his hand. I immediately recognize it. It's one of mine that he never returned. He nods and then asks softly, "How are you holding up?" His simple question almost brings tears to my eyes. I was an only child, raised by my grandparents who died 10 years ago. Chuck was my family. Him leaving still feels raw and like an amputation. I shrug and answer. "Time heals everything, I guess," I answer, non-committally. His lips thin, and he nods again. "Well, if you need anything, don't hesitate to give me a call. Just shout, if you will." "I'm sure I can hear you," he says, a strained joke. His discomfort almost brings a genuine smile to my face. After they leave, I'm immensely relieved to be alone once more, though happy that I don't have to cook. The delay. I'm walking through the grocery store, stocking up on last-minute supplies, when I get a message from Chuck. It says he postponed the flight they were supposed to be coming on and decided to board one 10 hours later. My heart instantly drops at seeing the message, blood running cold in my veins. I call him immediately. "Chuck, what the actual fuck?" I demand, my voice shaking with sudden fury. Language. "Yeah, so Ellie needs to do some last-minute shopping. I thought it would be best to take the later flight." No. We agreed that you will take the flight that will get here at noon tomorrow." "You can't do this." A cold dread has suddenly gripped my stomach. He makes an exhausted, annoyed sound at the other end. "Portia, you can't start this shit right now. It's just a 10-hour delay. Can you chill? You are acting crazy. See, this is the shit I was saying last time. You always exaggerate things." His voice is thick with condescension and annoyance. "I just want my kids. Don't try and change the flight again," I say, and violently hang up. I walk to my car and slam the door with too much force, the sound echoing my annoyance at the delay. "Yoo-hoo, Portia!" A voice comes, and I turn to see Lois and Mary. They are dressed in overpriced yoga sets and carrying identical matcha lattes. My sight of them instantly annoys me, but then I remember I was one of them once. The careful mom routines, the yoga, the drinks, all the aesthetics that I don't bother with now, dressed in a t-shirt, sweats, and Uggs. At least now I'm clean, and my hair is pulled tight into a neat bun. "Hey ladies." "What's up?" I greet them curtly. "Oh, it's so good to see you. We never get to see you at Pilates anymore," Mary says, feigning concern. I look around the parking lot, feeling intensely impatient. "Yeah, I've been going through some stuff since the divorce, as you are well aware and seem to enjoy discussing." Their mouths open and close soundlessly, like stranded fish. "I have to go," I tell them, not waiting for an answer, and get into my car. I'm annoyed with myself for the confrontation, but they hadn't come to see me once since the divorce, not even sent a simple message. I drive home and immediately pop open a fresh bottle of wine and pour a large glass. I spend the rest of the day on my phone, talking to my kids and texting, with the TV droning on mindlessly in the background. The airport. I wake up in the same chair I spent the night on and stretch, my body aching. I decide to take a shower and do a last-minute cleanup before the flight, now scheduled to arrive in the evening. I spend my day obsessively looking at the watch and baking, the act a desperate anchor. The news in the background is talking about a vague health alert in London, but my mind barely registers it, consumed instead with how I'm going to get my life back on track. I need to get a job, but first, drop off some resumes. The last time I had a job was in college, right before I got pregnant with Luke. Chuck was graduating and already had a job at his dad's company. Foolishly, I dropped out and married him, believing he would take care of me and the kids for the rest of my life. I believed it because he swore it. Looking back, I should have continued with law school. Doing that these last 2 years has been harder with the kids. And now the divorce. I'm sitting and looking at my watch nervously, and I don't hear anything from Chuck. The last update I got was from Luke, saying that they were going through some long checkups at the airport. The thing is, that was 3 hours ago. After waiting 6 more agonizing hours, I decide to drive to the damn airport myself. My frantic texts and calls go mostly unanswered. It's after 10 a.m. the next morning when my patience finally runs out, and I get into a furious argument with a security guard. Listen, my kids landed last night, and they've been held up. What the hell is going on? I demand to see my babies. I rant. There is a barricade that has been put up, and the security guy is wearing a full bodysuit that obscures his face. All flights show that they've been canceled since last night. The last flight that came in was the one my kids were on. Portia, another security guy, dressed entirely in black tactical gear, approaches me. His voice is muffled. I look at the new guy in confusion. Yes? I wonder where he knows me from. He raises his mask, and the handsome, familiar features of Travis appear. It's me. What are you doing here? He asks, his expression grim. Oh, thank goodness. I'm momentarily relieved to see him. Luke and Daisy have been locked up in here since last night. I don't know what's happening. No one is telling me anything. I tell him, gesturing around. Relatives and friends of people who are on the flight are gathering around me, sharing my panicked uncertainty. Travis pulls me aside urgently. They came in with the flight from Athens? He asks me, and I nod quickly in answer. His lips purse, and his voice drops to a grave whisper. Listen, there is some sort of virus that is going around, and they want to keep it quiet right now. We were hired to do security in this place. They told us the passengers are being held up for observation. I'll try to get into the observation area and check on Luke and Daisy, but right now, I need you to leave this place. I shake my head, a fierce resistance hardening my gaze. No, I'm not leaving without my kids. Portia, I hear you, but we are about to clear off this whole airport. No civilians are going to be allowed. Do you trust me? His question catches me completely off guard, and I find myself nodding automatically. Good. Then I need you to listen to me. I want you to leave. I promise you I'll check on Luke and Daisy and pass on your love, but I can't have you here right now. So you expect me to go back home and twiddle my fingers while my children are being held by the government? I ask him, horrified. No. I don't expect you to do that. Listen, how about you do me a favor? I'm going to call Lucy's daycare. I don't feel comfortable with her being at school if there is a bug going around. Can you pick her up for me? Please, he asks me. I know what he is trying to do. Set me on a task that will distract me. Promise me you'll get my kids, I ask him, desperately clinging to a sliver of hope. He shakes his head, an admission of the terrible reality. I can promise to make sure they are fine. I doubt they'll let me take kids that aren't mine. Besides, I doubt Chuck would allow that. He doesn't like me much, he says, and I purse my lips, unable to deny the truth of his words. Chuck always disliked Travis, saying he took himself too seriously, and that he had the hots for me. The last part one never understood. Travis was always so civil and polite with me. Okay, fine. Deal. You take care of my kids, and I'll take care of yours, I say, and he nods in agreement. A favor. I leave the airport feeling intensely anxious and drive away. When I get to Lucy's school, they seem to know I was coming, and they bring her from class. She scrunches her nose when she sees me. You are not my daddy. I give her a warm smile. Of course I'm not. I'm not tall with a scratchy beard and big muscles, I tell her, wrinkling my nose playfully. She chuckles and skips toward me. No. You are prettier, Daisy's mom, she says, and I buckle her into the car and drive her back to my place. My ears stay glued to the news, which gives little concrete information, and my phone. As the sun is setting, Lucy is asleep on the couch when I hear a car engine outside. I release a breath of relief, but I'm surprised to see it's Travis's vehicle. He is out of his tactical gear, dressed in jeans and a dark shirt. I see a flash of the words breaking news on the television screen, but I don't pay attention to it, focused entirely on the man approaching my door. Travis, I say his name with a smile that feels like the first genuine one in days. I look behind him, expecting to see Luke and Daisy, but he is alone. The look on his face makes me freeze, the smile dissolving. What is it? He leads me inside and looks at Lucy, who is fast asleep. His face tightens when he glances at the news that I'm still ignoring. Travis? I ask him again, my voice shaking now. He shakes his head. Portia. I don't know how to tell you this. Spit it out, I say harshly, dread clawing at my throat. I managed to get into what they were calling the observation zone. It was really a quarantine zone. Everyone there was actually already dead. I shake my head, my mind refusing to process the words. No, I don't understand. What do you mean? He holds my arms, sorrow heavy in his eyes. All the passengers and crew that were on MH832 are dead. This virus is actually much harsher than they let on. No, but my babies, they can't be dead, I say in a fractured voice of disbelief. I saw them with my own eyes, Portia. I'm so sorry. I pull away from him. You are lying, I accuse, grabbing my car keys and beginning to head for the door. Portia, you shouldn't go out there. It's not safe. He grabs me, and I struggle, fighting his iron-tight grip. Lucy wakes up and begins to cry, her small wails adding to the chaos. What stops my struggles is the shrill, intrusive sound of my phone ringing in my pocket. My face is stained with tears, and I quickly answer it. Portia Malone? The voice asks, formal and sterile. Yes, this is her. Portia Woodstock now, actually. We got divorced. Oh well, you are still listed as Mr. Malone's next of kin and emergency contact. Okay. Who is this? Oh, sorry. This is Moses Stokes from the CDC. I wanted to inform you that your ex-husband, Chuck Malone, son Luke Malone, and daughter Daisy Malone had unfortunately contracted the Hino virus. Efforts to stabilize their conditions proved futile, and they died. Please accept my deepest condolences, madam, he says. The voice had no inflection. It sounded like he has made dozens of these calls already, and I'm just a name to tick off his list. I don't say anything, just let my phone fall from my hands. All my bones and muscles seem to fail to hold me up. The world feels like it's spinning, and I can feel myself falling before I ever hit the ground. Strong arms catch and carry me to the couch where Lucy had been laying. I feel strong. Large hands push my hair away as hot tears fall from my face. Travis is saying something, but it feels far away, muffled, and underwater. I curl up in a tight, protective ball and cry. I don't hear anything else. I feel nothing else but the raw, searing pain ripping my soul into a million pieces. I didn't even want to live anymore. It felt too heavy to continue doing so. I cried till I had no more tears left in me. Hours or days passed. I don't remember. My mind disconnected somehow. I felt something cool usually pressed to my lips and would open, food or water. I would walk to the bathroom in a dazed, drone-like state, walk out, and either go to my bedroom or back to the couch. I had zoned out of everything. It felt more bearable to do so. Facing reality connected to what my life had become and what I had lost was too painful, too utterly shattering to try and do so. Chapter 2. The World Without Sound. The transition from a living woman to a breathing ghost was so smooth, so utterly painless, that I didn't even register the shift. Time had stopped being a measurement of hours and minutes and became, instead, a dense, suffocating substance. It settled around me, insulating me from the sharp edges of reality. The grief wasn't a raging fire. It was a slow, petrifying freeze that turned my heart into a useless, beautiful stone. For 2 weeks, my life was a looping reel of blankness. I was a body steered by habit, guided by a presence I faintly registered as Travis. He was the anchor in my dizzying, silent void. I would feel him appear, a shadow against the dim, constant light, and gently press a bottle of water to my lips, or a spoon of something soft and bland to my mouth. I swallowed, I slept, I drifted. Lucy, the small, bright-eyed girl, flitted in the periphery, sometimes placing a small, sticky hand on my cheek, her touch a brief, warm shock that never quite penetrated the ice wall I'd built around myself. I existed in a thick, gray syrup. I remember the feel of the couch fabric against my skin, the constant ache in my neck, and the dull, deafening roar of loss inside my skull. The silence wasn't a lack of noise. It was the sound of my family's absence, a black hole sucking all sound and light toward it. The fissure. Then, one Tuesday, 2 weeks to the day since that voice from the CDC called, a subtle change occurred. It wasn't a sudden break, but a tiny, agonizing fissure in the ice. I was lying on the couch, staring at the ceiling, when I became aware of the external silence. Not the silence of my personal grief, but a deeper, external quiet. There was no traffic rumble, no distant siren, no chirping of a neighbor's car alarm, no drone of the television that had been static for days. The world was silent. A new, cold dread, different from the paralyzing grief, began to seep into me. It was the feeling of being utterly alone, not just heartbroken. I sat up, my body protested with stiff aches, but the fog in my mind was finally, agonizingly, receding. The house was spotless. Someone had kept it immaculate, had kept me alive. That someone was Travis. Lucy's bright pink backpack sat by the foyer, a jarring splash of color against the beige neutrality of my grief den. The first coherent thought I formed, solid and painful, was about my children, not their final moment, but their physical remains. A mother's imperative to guard her young, even in death. I pushed myself off the couch, the silk gown I'd been wearing for days, feeling alien and heavy. I walked, unsteady, into the kitchen. Travis was sitting at the breakfast nook, wiping down a plate with a seriousness usually reserved for disarming bombs. Lucy was coloring intently beside him. They both looked up, and in the sudden, sharp focus of my returning consciousness, I saw the dark circles under Travis's eyes, the weariness etched around his mouth. He wasn't just supporting me, he was tired. "Portia," he said, his voice low, gentle, but laced with relief. "You're back." I gripped the edge of the counter, feeling the cool granite against my fingertips. Real, solid, enduring. "The kids," I rasped, my voice sounding unused, thin. "Chuck, I need to know about the remains. We need to go back, arrange something. A proper burial. I need to see them." The words came out in a rush, desperate and demanding. Travis sighed, a sound heavier than any I'd heard in the last 2 weeks, and set the cloth down. Lucy, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, stopped coloring and looked at her father. "Come here, sit down," he said, pulling out a chair. I ignored it. "Just tell me. Who do I call? The CDC man? The one who was so polite about telling me my family was dead? Where are they holding them?" Travis walked toward me, slowly, deliberately. He placed his large, warm hands on my shoulders, guiding me to look at him. "Portia, look at me. This is hard, but you need to hear this. You can't go back to the airport. You can't retrieve them." My breath hitched. "What are you talking about? They can't just keep them. They're my children." "I know. God, I know. But it's impossible. Because of the nature of the disease, the Hino virus, it's highly contagious and incredibly aggressive. The government didn't have time for protocol, not when they realized the scope. There were no remains to retrieve, not in the way you're thinking. They were..." He paused, struggling. "They were contained. Incinerated. Immediately. It was the only way they could prevent a catastrophic spread from the incoming flight." The words hit me like a physical blow, a vicious, final punctuation mark on my loss. No grave, no casket, no body to mourn over, to hold one last time. Just ash, scattered by the brutal winds of emergency protocol. They had been erased, utterly, irrevocably, by the disease and the desperate response to it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. The stone in my chest simply shattered, raining sharp fragments into my soul. The sheer empty finality of it was more terrible than death itself. "They're just gone," I whispered, the enormity of the word crushing me. "Yes, they are," Travis confirmed, his face mirroring my pain. "And Chuck, too." "I am so sorry, Portia. I wanted to protect you from this, but I knew you'd eventually ask." The silent apocalypse. I leaned against the counter, suddenly too weak to stand. The silence I had registered earlier returned, intensified by this terrible truth. It was a silence that spoke volumes about a world that had ceased to function. "What is that?" I asked, my voice flat, pointing vaguely toward the outside world. "The quiet. It's too quiet." "Where is everyone?" Travis stepped back, his posture shifting from comforter to protector, the Marine emerging. He looked at Lucy, who was drawing again, a small pocket of normalcy. "The world went on without you, Portia," he said, his voice now low and resonant. "And in the 2 weeks you were away, it all went to hell." He gestured toward the darkened living room. The Hino virus didn't stop at that one flight. It had already spread. It was too fast, too potent. The government's attempt to contain it failed almost instantly. There was panic, violence, and then, swiftly, silence. The infection ravaged through the world. The mortality rate was near total. A majority of the population died. Portia. Millions. Possibly billions. The world hasn't just gone quiet, it's empty. I stumbled toward the front window, pulling aside the heavy drapes I hadn't noticed were closed. The street outside, my perfect suburban street, was desolate. Cars were abandoned haphazardly in the middle of the road. A tricycle lay on its side on Lois's lawn. There was no movement, no life, only the ghostly stillness of a world emptied overnight. My neighbors, the ones who judged me for my grief, were now just silent ghosts in their overpriced yoga sets. "But the news? The TV?" I stammered, remembering the static, the sound that had annoyed me, then lulled me into my daze. "The power grid failed completely a week ago. Everything shut down," Travis explained, his eyes fixed on the empty street. "Communication, water treatment, utilities. That's why it's so quiet. No generators, no pumps, no traffic lights. We've been using bottled water and a small, solar-charged battery bank I brought over from my place. I drained your water heater when the pressure dropped, and we're rationing food." The flood of realization was staggering. The man who stood before me hadn't just been holding my hand. He had been protecting me from the complete collapse of civilization. He had been a one-man lifeboat. "You've been taking care of us," I whispered, the weight of the realization pressing down on my chest. "We waited for you to come back," he corrected, his eyes gentle again. "Lucy and I. We needed you to be well, because now we have to make a decision." The proposition. He sat down, his large frame suddenly looking heavy. Lucy climbed onto his lap, resting her head against his chest. They were a small, self-contained unit, and I was the broken piece he was trying to fit in. I need to find a safe place for Lucy to grow up, he said, his voice earnest, driven by a father's primal need. This suburb is a death trap. Too exposed, too many houses, too many potential scavengers. I have a cabin, up in the high mountains. Remote. It's stocked. It has a spring-fed water source, wood, and a defensible perimeter. I purchased it right after Sarah died, an insurance policy against something like this. I was planning to take Lucy there last week. He looked directly into my eyes, no pity now, only a raw, hopeful appeal. I want you to come with us, Portia. You can choose to stay behind, try to survive alone in this empty house, haunted by ghosts and surrounded by danger. Or you can come with us. We can go to the cabin. We can build a life there. A new one. A safe one. For Lucy and for us. I can't do this alone, Portia. And you shouldn't have to either. The proposition was vast, terrifying, and yet, strangely, soothing. It was a lifeline thrown across the chasm of my despair. He wasn't asking for love or commitment. He was asking for a partnership, a way to survive the end of the world together, as two damaged people, with one small innocent child between them. I looked at my perfectly clean kitchen, my perfectly empty house, a mausoleum of my former perfect life. Luke and Daisy were gone. Chuck was gone. My grief was a constant, tearing presence. The thought of staying here, drinking cheap wine until the last stores of water ran out, was tempting, an easy way to finish my slow descent. But the thought of Lucy, that small, trusting child, depending on the weary man who had saved me, that pierced my numbness. I walked slowly to the large kitchen window and stared out at the silence, at the abandoned symbols of my comfortable past. I touched the glass, cold and hard. I can't bury my family, I whispered, the tears finally, impossibly returning. These were different, not just pain, but the sharp, cleansing brine of a soul deciding to fight. I can't give them a service, or a stone, or a marker. Travis stood and walked to me, pulling me against his chest. His military issue shirt smelled faintly of wood smoke and sweat. I held on to him, my body shaking with the force of my despair. I know, he murmured into my hair, but you can honor them, Portia. By surviving, by being the kind of woman they would have been proud of, by helping me give Lucy a future that isn't just about hiding and mourning. He pulled back slightly, holding my face between his strong, rough hands. We leave tomorrow morning, before dawn. I've prepped the vehicle. I need to know now. Are you coming with us? I closed my eyes, picturing Luke's freckled face, Daisy's bright, demanding eyes. They were gone, but they had left a remnant of light in the world. Lucy, their neighbor's child, needed me, and Travis, the weary protector, needed me. I had a job, a heavy, desperate purpose, handed to me in the ruins of civilization. I opened my eyes, looking past him to Lucy, who gave me a small, hopeful smile. Yes, I said, the words solid and final. I'm coming. What do I need to pack? Chapter 3. Necessary departures. Travis had given me a timeline that felt brutal in its efficiency, 6 hours to pack and organize. We were leaving before the first hint of gray light touched the dead horizon. The urgency was a harsh, stinging antidote to my days, replacing the paralysis with a panicked yet focused energy. The only way to survive the crushing grief was to obey, to move, to be useful. The first place I went was the children's rooms. Luke's room was a hurricane of 8-year-old interests, exactly as he'd left it. A half-built Lego spaceship lay marooned on his desk, his backpack slumped against the chair, waiting for a carpool that would never arrive. The air was thick, with the faint scent of old sneakers and dusty books. A simple task, packing, became an act of impossible theological choice. How do you distill 8 years of a beautiful, vibrant boy into one small bag? I couldn't take the Legos. They were too big, too fragile. I chose the small things, the quiet tokens of his existence, his favorite threadbare dinosaur blanket. I lifted it carefully, inhaling the last faint whisper of him clinging to the fibers. I packed the chipped piece of quartz he'd insisted was his good luck stone, tucking it deep into my own pocket, where I could feel its cool, hard presence. Daisy's room, painted a cheerful buttercup yellow, was next. She was 5, not a toddler needing a crib, but a bright, demanding little girl whose presence filled the house with high-pitched, infectious giggles. The choice here was easier, yet more painful. I didn't take the bright, noisy toys that cluttered her floor. Instead, I carefully lifted the small, pink stuffed elephant she slept with every night. It still smelled faintly of baby powder and the warm, milky scent of a happy child. I tucked it into the middle of my shirt, a small, soft shield against the world. I grabbed a pair of her tiny, bright red sneakers, the kind that lit up when she stomped. They were perfect, miniature artifacts of a future that had vanished, a future where she would have run and played. I placed them gently at the very bottom of my duffel bag, a secret weight. My own packing was quick. Travis had pointed out what was truly essential: durable clothes, layered items, sturdy boots. He made sure I understood the difference between what I wanted to take, my extensive wardrobe, expensive jewelry, and what I needed to survive. A thermal base layer, waterproof jacket, sturdy hiking pants. It was a swift, brutal assessment of my useless former life. The woman who worried about the latest designer jeans was gone, replaced by a shell who just needed to stay warm and functional. Before I sealed the bags, I went to my bedroom closet. I pulled out a small cedar box where Chuck and I kept mementos of our brief, happier time. I didn't touch the wedding photos. I reached past them and pulled out two things: the first ultrasound picture of Luke, crinkled and faded, and a crayon drawing of our family. A stick figure me, a stick figure Chuck, and two lopsided beaming children. It had Luke's name scrawled backwards across the top. I tucked it into the lining of my backpack. That drawing was all that remained of the four of us. When I finally emerged, hauling a large backpack and a small duffel, Travis was waiting. He had already gathered his own gear. Lucy was asleep on a pile of blankets in the back of his massive, customized black SUV, strapped securely into her car seat. He didn't ask what was in my bags. He just looked at my face, a grim understanding passing between us. He saw the grief, the fear, and the sheer effort it took for me to stand upright. "We have one stop," he said, handing me a clean pair of thick, tactical gloves and a tight-fitting N95 mask. "We need 2 weeks of high-calorie, shelf-stable food and fuel. We're taking the long way out of the state to avoid the main highways." The weather report I picked up on a shortwave radio confirmed it. The rainy season has set in. "It's gonna be rough. We can't afford to run out of supplies before we reach the cabin." The desecrated aisles, the atmosphere inside the supermarket was less an abandoned store and more a tomb raided by panicked ghouls. The silence was thick, pressing in on my ears, amplified by the fluorescent lights that still flickered weakly, powered, I assumed, by a last-gasp backup generator. The air was cold, stale, and smelled faintly of rot from the produce aisle. We moved with a swift, synchronized efficiency I hadn't known I possessed. Travis, clad in dark, functional clothing, moved like a cat. His eyes constantly scanned the perimeter, not just for people, but for anything that looked out of place. He'd taught me the basic protocol before we entered. Don the mask and gloves, to protect against potential aerosolized virus left in the environment, a caution against the unknown, move quickly, and only take what was essential. "We need protein, dense calories, and non-perishables," he murmured, his voice muffled by the mask. "Canned beans, rice, tuna, dried fruit, large bags of nuts. Nothing bulky. Everything has to fit perfectly in the storage box." I was supposed to be his lookout, but I found myself completely captivated by him. In my former life with Chuck, competence was always outsourced. Chuck, the financial analyst, the white-collar professional, handled numbers and prestige. Changing a tire was a call to AAA. Fixing a leaky faucet was a call to a plumber. Planning a vacation was a call to a booking agent. His hands, though manicured and soft, were utterly useless in a crisis. He was a man built for comfort, not for survival. Travis was the exact opposite. Every movement was economical, precise. He didn't toss items into the cart. He stacked them, judging weight and space. His arms, thick with muscle gained from years in the Marines and his private security work, looked capable of solving any problem the end of the world could throw at us. His profile, visible even under the dim light, was sharp. The hard lines of a man who had seen conflict and knew how to navigate it. He was handsome, yes, but it was his strength, his utter certainty that drew my eye. My grief, for a brief, dangerous moment, felt secondary to the sheer magnetic attraction of his competence. I watched him effortlessly lift a heavy box of dehydrated meals and toss it into the cart. The contrast with my lost husband was glaringly obvious. Chuck had promised to take care of me. Travis, without saying a word, was taking care of me. He wasn't just shielding me from the emotional pain, he was physically, practically, ensuring my survival. It was a primal comfort I didn't realize I needed until I had it. "Grab those large bottles of vitamins, Portia," he instructed, his voice low but firm, snapping me back to reality. "And water purification tablets. They're next to the pharmacy section. We need to be able to make our own potable water." I nodded, hurrying to catch up. The store was a testament to the savagery of the final days. The liquor aisle was decimated. As I picked up the small bottles, my gaze snagged on a familiar brand of children's gummy vitamins. Luke used to complain every morning about the citrus taste. Daisy insisted on the purple ones. The small, mundane detail punched through my chest like a round of shrapnel. I stood there, motionless, the bottles heavy in my hands, hot tears instantly welling up behind my mask, fogging my vision. My breath hitched, a choked, silent sob. I will never buy these again. He won't need these anymore. Daisy will never demand the purple ones. A large, gloved hand suddenly rested on my shoulder. It didn't squeeze or prod, it simply anchored me. 5 minutes, Travis said softly, reading the sudden slump in my shoulders. Take 5 minutes, Portia. Then we move. He was giving me permission to mourn, right there between the desecrated aisles of a looted grocery store. I leaned my head against the cold metal shelving, shaking silently, clutching the vitamins like a meaningless talisman. I missed Luke's complaints. I missed Daisy's refusal to eat anything green. I missed the noise. I missed them living. After what felt like a lifetime, I straightened. The moment of grief was still with me, a bitter, constant taste in my mouth, but it hadn't derailed me. Ready, I croaked. Good, let's go. We finished the supply run quickly, grabbing extra batteries, matches, and a few rolls of heavy-duty duct tape. As we pushed the heavily laden carts through the shattered automatic doors, Travis took a final, cautious look down the main street. He secured the supplies into the reinforced aluminum cargo box he'd mounted on the back of his truck, locking it with 3 separate padlocks. The entire process took less than an hour. We need to get to the foothills before nightfall, he said, wiping the damp sweat from his brow. The rain is coming, and it's going to be a long drive through 2 states to reach the mountains. The road of ghosts. We left my suburb and the empty shells of my former friends behind. It felt like tearing a bandage off a massive wound, a quick, shocking pain followed by a stinging, liberating burn. Travis navigated the city streets with precision, avoiding the main arteries that were choked with overturned buses and abandoned cars. The silence here was terrifying. Buildings stood tall and empty, their windows staring like blank eyes. The air smelled of decay and stale rainwater. We were 2 tiny, moving specks in a sprawling graveyard. As predicted, the rain started, a fine, spitting mist at first, quickly escalating into a heavy, relentless downpour. It wasn't the gentle spring rain of my previous life. It was the suffocating gray curtain of the southern rainy season, a sheet of water that reduced visibility to barely 50 feet. Travis slowed the heavy truck, turning on powerful fog lights that sliced through the gloom. I sat in the passenger seat, watching him, my mind unable to stay away from the devastating contrasts of my 2 marriages, the marriage I thought I had, and the survival partnership I was now in. Chuck would have been hysterical by now, cursing the traffic, the rain, and the lack of cellular service. He would have been helpless, relying entirely on me to soothe his panic. I could almost hear his annoyed, weary voice. Portia, can you chill? You always exaggerate things. He was a man defined by the system, and when the system failed, he failed. Travis, however, was calm. His hands, massive and sure, gripped the steering wheel, his focus entirely on the road and the path ahead. He spoke only to give necessary updates. Half tank of fuel left. Checking the map, we need to take the old logging road here. Lucy is still asleep. He didn't need to soothe, he needed to solve. He was a man built for the absence of systems. He was a fortress. And I, the soft suburban woman who couldn't balance a checkbook without a spreadsheet, was hiding inside. The further we drove, the more the landscape changed. The flat, featureless plains of the coastal state gave way to gentle, rolling hills, then steeper inclines as we approached the vast spine of the Appalachian Mountains, our escape route to a higher, safer elevation in the next state. The low-lying roads were already beginning to flood, and Travis expertly maneuvered the heavy-duty truck through the rising water, his engine roaring. The rain hammered the roof, creating a deafening, comforting white noise that finally drowned out the silence of the dead world. It felt like the sky was washing away the contamination, rinsing the world clean for a new, brutal beginning. I peeled off my mask, needing air, and Travis didn't object. He kept his own mask lowered just below his chin, ready to pull up if needed. How much further until we cross the state line? I asked, looking out at the endless green and gray of the saturated forest. The trees looked ancient, judgmental. We'll cross it in about 2 hours if the back roads don't wash out, he replied, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the cab. Then another day of driving through the mountains. We need to be careful. The roads are prone to rock slides this time of year. I've driven them before, but not in these conditions. How can you be so sure about the cabin, about it being safe? I asked, needing to ground myself in his surety. He glanced at me, his eyes momentarily meeting mine, a flash of intense, tired blue. I built a life around surety, Portia. It's what the Corps taught me. You identify the risk, and you eliminate it. The risk was here. The surety is in the mountains. It's defensible, isolated, and has clean water. He looked back at the road, his jaw tight. I need to give Lucy a chance. She deserves more than a ghost town and a single grieving father. She needs stability. She needs a mother figure. My heart lurched at the word. The title was a raw, open wound. I can't replace Daisy or Luke, I said, the words catching in my throat. I'm not asking you to, he said, his voice softer now, understanding. They will always be with you, but Lucy needs someone who knows how to be soft. Someone who remembers what normal looked like. Someone who knows how to bake a cake or read a bedtime story that isn't about infantry tactics. The vulnerability of his statement, his admission that he, the strong, capable man, couldn't handle the soft things, was disarming. He was the anchor, and I was the compass, the one who remembered the small human gestures that made life worth living. It was an equal partnership in the apocalypse. He provided the survival, I provided the life. I watched the way the rain ran down the windshield, watching the reflection of his strong, weathered hands. His knuckles were scarred, his grip on the wheel absolute. Chuck's hands had been pale, good only for holding a phone or tapping a keyboard. Travis's hands were for building, repairing, and protecting. They were hands that promised survival, and in the absence of everything else, that promise felt like love. The slow, painful realization that I was feeling a profound, necessary attraction for my dead children's accidental guardian, the last capable man on earth, settled over me with the humid weight of the afternoon rain. I was grieving the loss of my family, but drawn inexorably to the man who was keeping me alive. It felt wrong, but entirely, desperately right. I turned away from his gaze, resting my head against the cold glass. The scent of pine and wet earth replaced the stale air of the city. We were climbing now, the truck tires kicking up gravel. The cabin, I said, focusing on the future he was painting. Is it big? He began to describe the heavy timber, the stone fireplace, the vast, silent forest surrounding it, his voice low and steady, painting a picture of remote, lonely survival. And for the first time since the CDC call, I felt a flicker of hope. A hope that, even without my children, I might still find a purpose in enduring. A hope that looked exactly like the strong, determined man driving me into the mountain wilderness. Chapter 4. The Seeds of a New Life. The relentless rain of the previous day gave way to a slick, oppressive humidity, cloaking the foothills in a thick silver mist. We had crossed the state line hours ago and were now deep into the Appalachian transition zone, the landscape shifting from rolling farmland to dense, ascending forests. Travis had driven almost non-stop, his commitment to putting distance between us and the coast absolute. We were low on crucial supplies. Specifically, anything for the long term. The first raid had focused on immediate calories. Now, we needed to think about survival beyond the supplies we had. Around midday, Travis pulled the heavy truck off the logging road and onto a rarely used gravel pull-off. He killed the engine, and the resulting silence was immediate and unnerving, broken only by the sharp, metallic pings of the engine cooling. There's a small place about 20 minutes ahead, Fairview, he said, consulting a heavy, laminated regional map. It was mostly retirees and tourists. Small pharmacy, a hardware store, a feed co-op, minimal population, which means minimal looting, and hopefully minimal chance of complications. Complications, I repeated, the clinical word heavy with unspoken horror. Human, or otherwise, he clarified, his eyes scanning the dense tree line. We're going in with the same protocol, masks up, move fast. Lucy stays with me until we find a safe spot for her. This is a crucial stop, Portia. We're hunting for meds, solar equipment, and seeds. Supplies for the future. The moment he said the word seeds, a profound realization hit me. Survival wasn't just about avoiding death. It was about coaxing new life from the ruined earth. The idea felt sacred, and suddenly, so did my duty. Fairview, a town frozen in time. Fairview was eerily pristine. It wasn't ravaged like the suburbs we'd left. It was simply abandoned, a theatrical stage waiting for actors who would never show up. The main street was lined with quaint, brightly painted clapboard buildings, a bakery, an antique shop, a small, independent drugstore. A flag, saturated with rain, hung limply outside the town hall. Travis parked the truck out of sight behind the defunct bank building. We donned our masks and gloves. Lucy, tucked between us, wore a small, oversized N95 mask that made her look like a tiny, determined astronaut. "Daddy, why is the sky house sleeping?" she asked, pointing a small, gloved finger toward the church steeple. Her voice was muffled and small, a sound too innocent for this dead world. Travis knelt immediately, his large frame compacting effortlessly. "The sky house isn't sleeping, sweetheart. It's just very, very quiet. Everyone went on a long vacation, and we're borrowing some of their things until they get back, okay?" "Did Luke and Daisy go on vacation?" she asked, her blue eyes wide looking at me. The question was a spear to the heart. My breath hitched, and the hot, familiar sting of grief burned my eyes. Luke and Daisy, my 8-year-old boy and my 5-year-old girl, were not on vacation. They were gone. Before I could formulate a gentle, heartbreaking lie, Travis smoothly intervened. Lucy, that's a question for Portia later. Right now, your job is to hold my hand and tell me if you hear anything that sounds like a bang or a crunch. Understood? Understood, she whispered, suddenly delighted to be given a vital role. I was grateful for his intervention. He hadn't dismissed the question. He'd compartmentalized it, protecting my ability to function. This capability, this seamless integration of brute strength and emotional intelligence, was why my attraction to him was growing into a terrifying, irreversible force. We started with the feed co-op. It was untouched. The smell of grain, fertilizer, and dry wood was strong. Travis immediately zeroed in on the non-GMO, organic heirloom seeds. Beans, corn, squash. The three sisters, he muttered, grabbing large packets. Potatoes, onions, and lots of greens. We need dense yields. I found myself surprisingly useful. My old life involved planning garden layouts and worrying about deer, and suddenly that irrelevant knowledge was gold. I pointed out the best germination starters and the soil pH testing kits. And fertilizer, I added, my voice low. We need high nitrogen fertilizer for the initial growth, but nothing too obvious. Something that looks like garden lime. He paused, looking at me over the top of his mask. You know this stuff. It's just gardening. I shrugged, but a warmth spread through me. It wasn't just gardening. It was a skill he respected. His approval, silent and intense, felt more valuable than any promotion Chuck had ever gotten. Chuck would have called it a hobby. Travis treated it like a tactical advantage. The pharmacy and the omen. Next, we went straight to the hardware store for solar equipment, finding small, portable solar panels and several deep-cycle marine batteries, essential for long-term power. Travis secured them, and we immediately moved to the final, critical stop, the independent pharmacy, Fairview Apothecary. The front door was already ajar, splintered wood around the lock. This was the first place we had entered that showed clear signs of being looted. The front counter was overturned, and bottles of Tylenol and useless cosmetics were scattered across the floor. As we moved through the decimated aisles, my focus was grimly on the pediatric section. I grabbed children's liquid pain reliever, children's chewable antibiotics, and a few small boxes of children's Dramamine, just in case Lucy got motion sickness on the winding mountain roads. My hands trembled as I packed them. They were the same brands I used to buy for Luke and Daisy. My grief was a heavy stone in my stomach, reminding me I was packing these life-saving drugs not for my own children but for a substitute, a beautiful little girl who needed me to keep her safe. It was a cruel, necessary transference of maternal duty. Travis, meanwhile, was focused on the prescription counter. He had his service weapon drawn, held low and steady, scanning the shadows. Okay, antibiotics, wound dressing, we're good, he murmured. Watch the back, Portia. Daddy, what's that funny stick? Lucy whispered, pointing to a clipboard that lay on the floor near the prescription counter. Travis froze, his senses instantly on high alert. He nudged the clipboard with the toe of his boot. It wasn't a stick. It was a syringe. More disturbing, the clipboard contained a handwritten sign. It was a crude, hastily scrawled note, written with a red marker on prescription paper. If you are looking for meds, take only what you need. We are trading for fuel/ammunition. We are in the East Hills. We will be back for stock. Do not loot everything. We are watching. B and L. The bottom of the paper was weighted down by a half-empty box of medical gloves. We were not alone. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This wasn't a quiet apocalypse. It was a contested landscape. My blood ran cold, fear replacing grief entirely for the first time. The silence of the town was a lie. Travis's body went rigid. He didn't swear or panic. He simply pulled Lucy tightly against his leg and scanned the shadows. His eyes were hard, sharp, predatory. This was his element, controlled danger. Okay, he said, his voice a low, steady vibration in his chest. The solar gear. We're not leaving it. But we need to go, Travis. That note is a threat. I urged, terrified, which is precisely why we take the solar gear. They know we were here. They know what's valuable. They won't leave the hardware store untouched twice. We're going to use the threat as cover. They'll expect us to run. His refusal to yield to panic was intoxicating. The adrenaline I felt was mixed with a disturbing, almost shameful thrill. In that moment of pure danger, I felt connected to Travis by a rope made of sheer survival. His protection was a palpable force, a wall of competence and masculinity that made me feel simultaneously terrified and absolutely secure. His hands, gripping the wheel earlier, were now on his weapon, the hands of a protector. The desire to lean into that strength, to lose myself in the safety he represented, was intense. It was a desperate, ugly form of love being born in the ruins of the world. rooted in the failure of my previous life and the overwhelming threat of this new reality. We backed out of the pharmacy, moving silently. The note was an omen. The world had survivors, which meant the world had predators. We raced to the hardware store. The adrenaline made us fast. Travis unbolted the panels and batteries we had staged. We worked in a frenzy, straining to load the heavy equipment into the back of the SUV, our masked faces inches apart as we struggled with the weight. His sweat, the scent of pine and exertion, filled my nostrils, overpowering the stale mask air. He was magnificent in his purpose, and every straining muscle was a reassurance of our survival. Finally, the truck was sealed. We were out of Fairview in minutes, leaving the ominous silence and the threatening note behind. The final climb. We spent the next 5 hours driving, climbing, and pushing the limits of the truck's engine through dense, waterlogged forest trails. The journey became a blur of muddy inclines, sharp drops, and the low, constant roar of the diesel engine. The rain returned, heavier this time, making the tires slip and spin on the steep, rocky road. We had left the paved world entirely behind. "We're 3,000 feet up now," Travis announced, his eyes fixed on the narrow, winding track ahead. "The air's cleaner, and we're off the main access routes. We should be crossing the final ridge in 20." I looked out the window. The trees were thicker here, pine replacing deciduous growth. The air was crisp, scented with resin and damp earth. It felt ancient, untouched. My grief, which had momentarily been drowned out by fear, returned, but it was softer now, blending into the vast, silent beauty of the mountains. It was a pain that felt appropriate to the scale of this new world, immense and eternal. I rubbed the quartz stone Luke had given me inside my pocket, a quiet anchor to my sorrow. Then, just as the sun was beginning its slow descent into the misty valleys, painting the western sky in bruised oranges and deep purples, Travis steered the truck through a barely visible break in the tree line. "Hold on," he instructed. We bounced over a final stretch of uneven rock, and then, the vehicle stopped. "We're here," he said, cutting the engine. I pushed open the door and stepped out. The air hit me, cold, pure, and shockingly silent. The cabin was exactly as he had described, built of dark, heavy timber and local stone, nestled against a sheer rock face. It looked like something built to last 100 years. No smoke, no signs of recent life, only the profound stillness of the mountain wilderness. A deep, covered porch sheltered the front door, and a clear, icy stream cascaded down the rocks just 50 feet away. It was remote, secure, and beautiful. It was survival, crystallized. He took Lucy, who was now stirring and rubbing her eyes, out of the truck. I stood there, looking at the solid, immovable walls of the cabin, the end of our terrifying journey. Travis looked at me, his eyes tired but deeply satisfied. He didn't need to say anything about the journey, the danger, or the future. He just gestured toward the cabin, a simple invitation. "Welcome home, Portia," he said, his voice raspy with relief. "We're safe, now we start." I walked over, wrapping my arms around myself, feeling the grit of the road on my clothes, the cold mountain air on my skin. I looked down at the tiny, worn shoes of my Daisy, still tucked in my bag. They were not for walking on this ground. They were a memory, heavy and loved. But Lucy, oblivious to the ghosts, was looking up at the rock face. "Is that where the giants live?" she asked. I knelt beside her, pulling down my mask. My voice was no longer thin and weak. It was strong, steady. "Maybe," I said, pointing to the stream. "But this is where the water comes from, and we are going to make a fire inside, away from the rain." I looked up at Travis, standing tall and solid against the darkening mountain. The attraction was no longer a guilty secret. It was a fundamental truth of my existence. He was the root, and I was the desperate vine, clinging to his strength to survive. He picked up the first heavy bag of supplies. "Let's get the little one inside before the temperature drops," he said. We had arrived. Our new life, forged in fire and grief, had just begun. Chapter 5. The Architecture of Survival. The cabin was not just a shelter, it was a fortress carved out of the mountain. It was built with heavy, dark timber and local granite, designed less for comfort and more for endurance. Inside, it was a 2-bedroom, open-plan loft, a space that felt vast and echoing after the confines of the SUV. The main level was a high-ceilinged, single room encompassing the kitchen, a living area dominated by a massive stone fireplace and a small dining nook. A set of sturdy wooden stairs led up to the loft level. We spent the first few hours simply hauling in the gear from the truck, transforming the beautiful, empty space into a cluttered, functional base camp. Settling in, Travis directed the operation with the efficiency of a seasoned supply officer. He quickly assessed the loft level. It was divided into 2 bedrooms, one large master suite and one smaller, simpler room. "Portia, you and Lucy take the main room," he decided, pointing to the master loft. "It's closer to the bathroom plumbing line, it's got a thicker door, and it's the most defensible space upstairs." I didn't argue. The need to protect Lucy superseded any lingering discomfort about sharing a room with a 5-year-old in what felt like my new marital home. "Where will you be?" "I'll take the smaller room," he said, already hauling a sealed crate of canned goods up the stairs. "It gives me a sightline over the main door and the path to the stream. I'll keep the satellite radio and my gear up there. We need to be able to talk across the floor, especially at night." The practical arrangement solidified the strange, dependent architecture of our new relationship. We were partners in survival, roommates and co-parents, bound by necessity and the constant threat of the outside world, yet separated by a thin wall of professional distance. Once the supplies were stowed, food in sealed bins and shelved, batteries stacked against a wall and weapons secured in a locked case, the true work of building a home began. Illumination and acquisition. The first priority was light. We unpacked the solar panels we'd stolen from Fairview and began the installation. This was entirely Travis's domain. We carried the heavy marine batteries upstairs. Travis worked with astonishing speed and competence, using tools from his well-stocked toolkit. He mounted the solar panels onto the cabin's sturdy roof, routing thick, insulated cables down to the loft where he set up a charge controller and an inverter. Within a few hours, he flipped a switch, and a single bright, low-wattage LED bulb flickered to life in the living area. "That," he said, wiping sweat from his brow, "is our world now. Low power, maximum efficiency. That array should run those essential lights, the satellite radio, provide hot water, and make sure the refrigerator is constantly running, provided we have clear sun." I felt a surge of respect that had nothing to do with attraction and everything to do with awe. He didn't just talk about survival, he built it. The following morning, the work shifted to acquisition. Our most pressing needs were wood and food. "Winter starts early up here," Travis explained, his voice serious as he checked the axe blades. "The snow will be heavy, and we'll need fire 24/7 for heat and cooking. We need to fell and split enough wood to last us at least 5 months." He showed me how to identify deadfall, how to safely approach a felled tree, and how to use the small, powerful handsaw. It was grueling, back-breaking work. I joined him in wood gathering, doing everything I could to slowly fill up the shed. My hands, accustomed to tapping on a laptop and holding a wine glass, quickly blistered and ached with a deep, punishing soreness. Meanwhile, I took on foraging. Water for home use was piped directly to the cabin. The stream was pure, but Travis insisted I learn how to use the life straw and purification tablets, emphasizing that complacency was death. I spent hours wading through the undergrowth, learning to identify the edible mushrooms and wild berries, elderberries, which we dried, and wild raspberries, which we ate immediately. I found stands of young pine, whose needles could be boiled for vitamin C, a necessity for the coming cold. Travis, the professional predator, focused on hunting when he wasn't chopping wood. He left early, silent as smoke, and returned late. One evening he came back dragging a large white-tailed deer, his face smudged with dirt and effort. The subsequent process was brutal and immediate. He taught me how to butcher the animal, an education that was visceral and repellent, yet absolutely vital and fascinating. The sight of his powerful arms expertly wielding the hunting knife, separating muscle and bone, was disturbing, but again, a demonstration of his complete undeniable capability. "We preserve everything," he instructed, his voice low and devoid of emotion. "Some of the meat is dried and cured, the rest will be frozen. The hide will be salted for warmth, the bones boiled for broth. Nothing is wasted." The starkness of this new life, the constant pain, the smell of wood smoke and blood, the physical exhaustion, began to burn away the last remnants of my old identity. My anxieties about my messy hair and my stained pajamas felt ridiculous. My fear was being replaced by a fierce, driving determination. And through it all, the sexual tension was a low, constant hum, a third entity in the room. That was only sometimes broken by Lucy's presence. We were living in intimate proximity, sharing the tasks of survival. I would watch the flex of the muscles in his back as he split logs, or see the concentration lines around his eyes as he taught Lucy how to whittle a stick. When he helped me clean the blood off the butcher block, our hands would brush, and the contact was instantaneous and electric, making him quickly step back. It was a need born of trauma, a desire for the most fundamental reassurance of connection in a dead world. We were the last two functional adults, and biology was making its brutal, undeniable case. Yet the barrier was firm, a wall of respect and professional duty. He was the protector. I was the dependent. He would not cross that line, and I, paralyzed by both grief and propriety, could not initiate it. A grave and a promise. One evening, as the exhaustion began to pull the darkness in, I approached Travis by the fire pit, where he was oiling his rifle. Lucy was asleep upstairs. "Travis," I began, my voice quiet. "I need to ask you for something." He stopped, placing the rifle down instantly, giving me his full, undivided attention, his intense blue eyes on me. Anything, Portia. I took a deep breath, clutching the small duffel bag that held my children's tokens: Luke's dinosaur blanket, Daisy's pink elephant, the red sneakers, and the backward scrawled crayon drawing. I need a grave, I whispered, the words thick with unshed tears. 2 graves, side by side. I can't leave them with nothing. I need a place to put these things. A place to mourn them. My face crumpled. The grief was a physical weight, pressing me down into the cold earth. Travis didn't offer platitudes or pity. He didn't even touch me. He simply nodded, his face etched with understanding. Show me where, he said. The next morning, we walked to a small, secluded rise overlooking the stream, a place where a thick stand of white birch offered soft shade and a sense of enduring peace. The air was clean, the light gentle. He didn't ask me to help. He simply took the shovel and, with powerful measured strokes, dug 2 small, precise graves side by side. I watched, weeping silently, as the dark earth was turned, the sound of the shovel hitting rock a painful rhythm. When the holes were deep enough, I knelt and, with shaking hands, placed the objects, the blanket, the sneakers, the elephant, the drawings, into the cold earth. I covered them with soil, packing it gently. Travis stood back, allowing me the solitude of the moment. Then, he came forward, and using his strong hands and the shovel, he compacted the earth, ensuring the ground was secure. Later that afternoon, he brought me 2 pieces of flat, dark slate he'd found by the stream. Using his hunting knife and a small carving tool, he worked patiently by the firelight, the soft sound of metal scratching stone filling the cabin. He carved 2 small, simple tombstones. On the first, he carefully etched, Luke Malone, son, brother, age 8, and on the second, Daisy Malone, daughter, sister, age 5. He didn't need to ask me for the inscriptions. He knew. The following morning, we installed the stones. They were small, humble markers, but they gave my sorrow a geography. A real place. They won't be forgotten, Portia, Travis said, his voice husky. He placed a hand briefly, gently on my shoulder, a moment of true, unadulterated comfort that transcended mere attraction. Now we live for them. I felt Lucy's small arm slide into mine as she leaned on me, standing still for once. The finality of the act was liberating and devastating. I had buried my dead, physically and emotionally. I was now tethered entirely to the present, to the cold, to the work, and to the powerful silent man standing beside me, holding the hand of the last child left in my care. The winter was coming, and we were ready. Chapter 6. The Sound of Company. The first 4 weeks at the cabin had fallen into a rhythm of brutal, necessary labor. We had become a unit. Travis, the relentless engine of survival and protection, Lucy, the small bright pocket of normalcy, and me, the adapting organism, learning to can foods, tend the fire, and manage the growing stores of meat and berries. We were secure, fortified against the winter and the silent world below. It was the 5th week, just as the first hints of frost were hardening the moss on the north side of the rocks, that the silence was shattered. I was outside with Lucy, tending the small protected patch of winter greens we'd started, when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of a heavy vehicle struggling up the logging trail. My blood turned instantly to ice. I grabbed Lucy and yanked her behind the thick stone wall of the cabin. Stay down, Lucy. Quiet. Travis was already emerging from the woodshed, his rifle, the one he always kept within arm's reach, leveled and ready. His face was a mask of concentration, stripped of all warmth. He moved with a terrifying grace, melting into the shadows of the porch, the color of his tactical clothing blending seamlessly with the timber. The vehicle, an old beat-up pickup truck with massive tires, slowly lurched into the clearing. It was piled high with gear, tarps, and the visible forms of several people. Travis stayed silent until the engine died. Then, his voice boomed, sharp and authoritative, cutting through the mountain air. Halt! Drop anything you're carrying and identify yourselves. The new arrivals, a man, tall and broad-shouldered with a tired, kind face, slowly raised his hands. Beside him, a woman with tight, graying braids cautiously stepped out, holding a baby wrapped in a thick blanket. Trailing behind them were 2 girls, one who looked maybe 15, and a smaller girl, around 6 years old. We mean you no harm, the man called out, his voice hoarse. My name is Rob. This is my wife, Clara. We saw the smoke about half a mile away. We're just looking for safe, high ground. Travis kept his rifle steady. How did you find this trail? And where did you come from? Rob looked genuinely exhausted and desperate. We were staying in Fairview. Down by the river valley, my breath hitched. Fairview. Where we saw the note in the pharmacy. We had a cabin just outside of town, Rob continued, gesturing vaguely south. It was manageable, until about 3 days ago. A gang, maybe 10-15 men, heavily armed, rolled in. They called themselves the Vultures, took over the main street, looted the gas station, and started demanding taxes from anyone staying nearby. They're controlling the place now. We left everything and ran. We know they'll be sweeping the whole valley, looking for supplies and people. He nodded toward the mountain slopes above. We decided to go higher. I doubt they will try to come up here. It looks pretty much like empty forest. We just need to put up a few tents, get away from the looters. Travis didn't lower the gun. His entire body radiated distrust and suspicion. He was right to be cautious. In this world, company was usually synonymous with danger. I stepped out from behind the wall, Lucy still clinging to my leg. "Travis, stop," I said quietly, making sure my hands were visible. He shot me a look of pure, concentrated fury. A warning. I ignored it. I walked toward the group, maintaining a respectful distance. Lucy, seeing the small girl, peeked out from behind me, instantly curious. The 6-year-old, small and bundled in a thick coat, saw Lucy and smiled, a genuine, uninhibited spark of joy. Lucy returned it with a shy giggle. I turned back to Travis. "They have a baby, Travis. And a little girl. They're running from trouble, not looking for it. We've gathered so much wood, so much food. We can't survive alone, not really. We need other people close by. We need eyes, hands, and if nothing else, we need to know there's still humanity left." My voice was low enough for only him to hear but also insistent. I knew my argument wasn't just about charity, it was about my own sanity. I couldn't watch Lucy grow up entirely alone. Travis stared at me for a long, agonizing minute, the rifle unmoving. His mind was doing the calculations. Risk versus reward. More mouths to feed versus more hands to work, more eyes to watch, and a necessary inoculation against complete isolation. Finally, the tension eased from his shoulders, and he slowly lowered the rifle, resting the butt on the ground. "Rob," Travis said, his voice flat. "I'm Travis. This is Portia, and my daughter Lucy. You stay at the edge of the clearing. You don't move until I've searched every corner of your vehicle and every pack you have." Rob readily agreed. The relief on Clara's face was profound. A new community. Rob and Clara were decent, hardworking people. The search of their truck revealed only basic necessities, a few family photos, and a strong sense of exhaustion. The older girl, Aisha, who was 15, was quiet and intensely protective of her younger sister, Lana, 6, and the baby, Gabriel. The arrival of Lana was a miracle for Lucy. They instantly became inseparable, whispering secrets and drawing elaborate pictures in the dirt. Lucy, who had been quiet and internal, blossomed overnight. My argument about needing other people proved instantly true. Rob was strong and skilled with construction. Within 3 days, Travis and Rob, 2 men who had clearly spent time in different corners of the world but shared a deep competence, were erecting a smaller, sturdy wood cabin 50 yards from ours. They used the excess lumber Travis had already felled for the winter. Clara was resourceful, sharing her knowledge of basic herbal medicines with me. The arrangement was strict. Travis dictated the security protocol. Rob was a trustworthy ally, but Travis remained the ultimate authority. The line crossed. The pressure of shared survival, combined with the new layers of tension and responsibility, turned the background hum of our attraction into a deafening roar. We were allies, friends, and co-conspirators in this crazy new life. The barrier of professional-friendly distance I had noted earlier was now paper-thin, vibrating with every shared look, every accidental brush of hands as we passed tools. One evening, after we had finished a late dinner of venison stew and the new family was settled in their still-tented area, I was cleaning the dishes in the warm lamplight. Travis was by the fire, sharpening his knife, a constant ritual. I walked over to him, ostensibly to hand him the whetstone. The fire cast long, dancing shadows, making his profile stark and deeply masculine. He was clean-shaven now, having abandoned the scruff, making his jawline look even stronger. I knelt beside him, my heart hammering. I put the stone on the hearth, and before my survival brain could veto the action, I leaned in and placed my mouth against his. It was a soft, tentative kiss, but it was electric. The contact I had craved for weeks, months, finally realized. He went utterly still. For a fraction of a second he responded, a deep, involuntary sound rumbling in his chest, and then he pulled back, sharply, his large hand coming up to gently but firmly hold my shoulders away. His eyes, in the low firelight, were raw, tormented. "Portia, stop." The rejection was a cold shock. My face burned with humiliation, and I scrambled backward, clutching my arms across my chest. I'm sorry, I thought." My voice was thick with embarrassment and residual desire. He stood up, walking away from the fire, putting distance between us. Don't apologize. It's not you." The frustration, the desire, the grief, and the sheer impossibility of our situation suddenly erupted. "Then what is it, Travis?" I blurted out, standing up, my voice shaking with unexpected anger. You look at me. I feel it. You shield me. You trust me. I feel you want me. We share a life, we share a roof. You're the most honorable, most decent man I have ever known. If it's not me, then what is it? Do you even find me attractive? Because you're the only man left who can answer that question, and I need to know why you keep building this wall between us that I've been trying to tear down. He turned back slowly, and the look he gave me was devastating. It was not revulsion. It was agony. Attractive? He whispered, the sound ragged. He took a step toward me, closing the distance but not touching me. Portia, I have been in love with you for 2 years. The statement hit me like a physical blow, stripping the air from my lungs. What? 2 years, he repeated, his voice dropping to a low, intense confession. Since the day you came and told me to tone down my Halloween decorations as they were scaring your kids. You were everything I wanted, everything I knew my life was missing. You were sunshine, and every time I saw you with Chuck, every time you talked about his work or his plans, I hated him. Because he was a piece of shit that didn't deserve you. You were too good for him. He didn't appreciate the light you carry. I saw it, every damn day, and I couldn't say anything. There were days when my highlight would be seeing you walk your dog and see you smile at me. He stopped, running a hand roughly through his short hair. And now I have you. We're alone. We're dependent. You're the reason I get up every morning, you and Lucy. And that's why I push you away. Because of Chuck? I asked, trembling. No. Because of Luke and Daisy. Because of the grief. I won't take advantage of you. I won't let you confuse survival with love. I won't let you wake up one morning and realize you only came to me because I was the last competent man standing. You are still grieving, Portia. And until you tell me that you want me, not as a protector, but as a man, I won't compromise the safety and respect we've built. That kiss was raw desire, and I can't be intimate with you until I know your heart isn't just seeking comfort for what it's lost. His honesty was staggering. It wasn't rejection. It was an act of profound, sacrificial love. My heart, I whispered, stepping closer, this time without touching him. My heart is broken, Travis. It will never be fixed. But the only thing that doesn't feel like pain anymore is you. I don't need comfort. I need you. I reached up and touched his cheek, tracing the rough, 5 o'clock shadow I usually only saw in the mornings. This time, he didn't pull away. He leaned into the touch, closing his eyes, letting out a heavy, shuddering breath. He opened his eyes, and the blue was darker now, blazing with held-back need. I need you too, he confessed. He picked me up then, not roughly, but with a deep, consuming necessity. The world dissolved into the roar of the fire, and the urgent need of 2 souls finally finding solace in the wreckage. He carried me upstairs to the smaller loft, past the quiet door where Lucy slept. We spent the night together, making love with a fierce, tender urgency that transcended the fear and the grief. It was an act of creation in a world of decay, a defiant assertion that life and love could still bloom in the desolate mountains. It wasn't about forgetting, it was about honoring the dead by choosing to live, truly live, with the man who had loved me in silence for 2 years. His hard body was exactly what I needed to ground me. Supply run, planning the future. We woke up the next morning exhausted, naked, intertwined, and changed. The morning light filtering through the small loft window didn't feel judgmental. It felt cleansing. The relationship was no longer an electric fence. It was a warm, shared blanket. Drowsily, I kissed him as he ran his hands over my unclothed body. I felt him enter me slowly, and with a relaxed laziness, we made love some more, and lay sated, until in the next room we felt Lucy get up. Then quickly we both put on our clothes and began our day. The first thing we did after a relaxed breakfast was talk to Rob and Clara. We need a major resupply run, Travis announced, tracing lines on the map. The winter stores are good, but we need more fuel, more medical supplies, and we need to check the status of a larger abandoned town about 50 miles south, Oak Ridge. It was a bigger population center, which means more loot, but also more risk. The consensus was immediate. Rob, now deeply indebted to Travis for their safety, was eager to help. We go. We take the truck, Rob confirmed. I know how to read traps. Clara and I can focus on food and clothing. You and Portia focus on technical gear and meds. Clara and I agreed to the plan. It was settled. 4 adults, 1 vehicle, a high-stakes, 2-day run. We need a strong watch here, Travis stated. No matter what happens out there, the kids are safe. Aisha, can you handle it? Aisha, the 15-year-old daughter of Rob and Clara, a girl who carried herself with a maturity well beyond her years, nodded seriously. I know how to use a shotgun, sir, she said, her voice firm. And I know the signal protocol. I'll keep Lana, Lucy, and Gabriel safe. The sense of community and shared purpose was profound. We were no longer two isolated families. We were a small, unified tribe. The next morning, before the sun crested the ridge, the four of us, masked and heavily armed, slipped out of the clearing. I watched Aisha standing guard on the porch, her silhouette small but resolute against the dark cabin. As Travis pulled the truck onto the winding logging trail, I leaned my head against his shoulder. His presence was my shield, his heart my home. We were heading into danger, but for the first time since the world ended, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. Chapter 7. The Price of Living. The journey to Oak Ridge felt like a transgression. We had spent weeks isolating ourselves, building a wall against the world, and now, here we were, willingly driving toward a potential hornet's nest. I sat beside Travis in the front cab, my heart a heavy, cold weight in my chest. Clara and Rob were silent in the back, their exhaustion overshadowed by the grim determination of wanting to provide a secure future for their children. Oak Ridge was about 50 miles south, a small town that had once been a regional hub. We reached the outskirts by midday. Travis killed the engine 2 miles out, and we proceeded the rest of the way on foot, traveling parallel to the main road, concealed by a dense screen of old pines. The town was dead, yet teeming. The stillness was deceptive. Burned-out husks of cars littered the main intersection. We could smell wood smoke, but it wasn't the clean scent of our camp's fireplace. It was the acrid, lazy smoke of careless, destructive occupation. The ambush. We began scouting the main commercial strip. Travis, silent and fluid, used hand signals to coordinate with Rob. Rob, a former engineer, was surprisingly adept at reading terrain and identifying tripwires, the silent language of petty occupation. We were nearing the old medical supply building when the silence broke. A sharp whistle cut the air. Contact! 3 o'clock, Travis yelled, shoving me hard behind the concrete base of a shattered billboard. Suddenly, the street erupted. 3 armed men, clearly vultures, judging by the ragged tactical gear and the aggressive swagger, poured out from the alleyway of a defunct hardware store. They hadn't seen us, but they had heard us. Travis opened fire immediately, his movements impossibly fast and accurate. The roar of his rifle was deafening. Clara, who was surprisingly good at handling firearms, returned fire from her covered position with Rob. This wasn't a skirmish. This was a defense of our entire world. If they captured any of us, our sanctuary, our children, would be lost. I gripped my gun. Travis had shown me how to use it, but I never thought there would come a time when I would actually need to. A bullet whizzed past my ear, chipping the concrete next to my head. My training, learned weeks ago in a panic, suddenly became muscle memory. I released the safety, my heart pounding a furious war drum. We took down 2 of the vultures almost immediately, but the third disappeared into a collapsed building. Fall back! They'll have backup, Travis commanded, pulling me up, dragging me backward into the cover of a side street. As we retreated, a sudden, unexpected sound joined the cacophony. A ragged volley of rifle fire from the far end of the street, aimed directly at the vulture's last known position. Wait, Travis said, holding up a clenched fist. They aren't shooting in this direction. Friendly fire. The community and the collaboration. Cautiously we emerged, rifles still aimed. The source of the new gunfire was a group of 3 elderly men, wearing mismatched uniforms and carrying vintage hunting rifles, standing guard at what looked like a makeshift barricade near the town square. Travis, ever the diplomat of violence, identified himself. We're not vultures, we're survivors from the north. Who are you? One of the men, a wiry figure with a silver mustache and the posture of command, lowered his weapon. Former deputy sheriff, name's Miller. We're the only ones left. You just took down 2 of the bastards who've been trying to run us out. How many were there? Travis asked, looking around, still on alert. Today we only saw 3. They arrived in town 2 days ago, trying to dictate to us how we should operate in our own town. You handle a gun well, son. Military? Miller asked. Marines, Travis answered. The men visibly relaxed when they heard that. We quickly secured the perimeter, and Deputy Miller led us to their hidden sanctuary, the town's old underground parking garage, sealed off and disguised. Inside, less than 100 people, mostly elderly folks, women and a few teenagers, were living in terrified, organized desperation. The vultures had been trying to set up a permanent base at the old bank building, Miller explained, gesturing at a faded town map. They're trying to control access to the river and the highway. There's maybe 15 of them total we've counted. They leave us alone mostly, but they won't let us get access to any supplies now. Travis's eyes narrowed. They won't leave you alone, deputy. They're establishing dominance. If we don't wipe them out now, they'll bring 20 more, and they'll harvest this entire community. A fierce consensus formed among us 4 adults and Deputy Miller. We couldn't leave this threat alive. The decisive strike. The plan was quick, brutal, and Travis efficient. Deputy Miller provided schematics of the bank. We had 4 experienced shooters, Travis, Rob, Miller, and another older man named Frank, and the element of surprise. We moved at dusk. I, along with Clara, was tasked with monitoring the only known escape route, an old sewer access near the river, ready to intercept any runners. This was my moment of true testing. I wasn't just foraging or hiding, I was part of a lethal operation. The main assault was swift. Travis and his team breached the rear of the bank, using distraction devices and their superior firepower. The sound of the fighting was horrific. A brief, shattering eruption of automatic and semi-automatic gunfire, screaming and breaking glass. Clara and I huddled by the sewer grate, guns ready. The smell of fear was thick. Suddenly, the grate above us rattled violently. A figure, a large, panicked vulture, burst out, scrambling toward the riverbank. "Now, Portia!" Clara yelled. I lifted the gun. My hands were steady, my breathing shallow. All I saw was the target, the threat to Lucy and Lana. I fired. The blast hit the man in the leg. He screamed and went down. Clara finished the job with a single, precise shot. The silence that followed was absolute. When Travis emerged an hour later, he was covered in grime, soot, and blood that wasn't his own. He looked like a creature forged in combat. The vultures were eliminated. The hard truth and the lifeline. The community emerged from the underground garage, weeping with relief and disbelief. But Travis was quick to temper their joy with brutal realism. He stood in the center of the town square, the dead still being moved, and delivered his warning. "Listen to me. You are safe tonight, but you will not be safe next month, or the month after. This is a metro area. It has resources. It will always attract scavengers. You are less than 100 people, spread out, visible and stationary. If you want continuous safety, you must move. You must form smaller, autonomous cells and move into the remote areas. Your strength is your knowledge of this region. Use it. Disappear." His words were harsh, but they were the truth of the new world. Survival meant invisibility. However, we offered them a lifeline. Rob, Travis, and I spent the rest of the night setting up a long-range ham radio system we had retrieved from the supply store. We fixed a simple antenna on the tallest remaining building. "This is encrypted, high-frequency shortwave," Travis explained to Deputy Miller, handing him a handwritten call sign schedule. "We can transmit up to 75 miles in these conditions. Check in once a week. If we don't hear from you, we assume the worst. If you decide to move, tell us the general direction. We'll be your eyes and ears, but we won't be your fortress." We filled the truck with everything we needed: fuel, antibiotics, generators, and bulk food supplies, and left Oak Ridge before dawn. We had not just survived, we had conquered, and we had created an uneasy alliance with the remnants of civilization. Homecoming and the unbreakable bond. The drive back was quiet, the exhaustion settling deep into our bones. The tension of battle had faded, replaced by the profound, mutual respect of warriors who had saved each other's lives. We were no longer partners, we were inseparable. When we pulled into the clearing, the sight of Aisha on the porch, holding Lucy's hand and watching us with the baby sleeping in a carrier beside her, broke the hardened shell we had built on the road. The reunion was emotional and profound. Later that evening, after the new supplies were secured and the new family was asleep in their cabin, Travis and I sat by our fire, the flames casting a warm glow. We hadn't spoken about the future since our night together, but now, the conversation was necessary. He was cleaning his knife, his ritual of calming down. I watched him, seeing not the distant professional, but the man who loved me enough to endure 2 years of silence and then refuse me until my heart was ready. "We did it," I whispered, resting my head on his shoulder. He stopped cleaning the knife, placing it carefully on the hearth. He turned toward me, pulling me into his lap, holding me with a solidity that felt more real than the stone cabin around us. "We did," he murmured. "And you, Portia, you didn't break. You held the line." "I did it for Lucy and the other kids," I admitted, referring to all the children. "And I did it because you showed me how." He kissed me, and this kiss was different from the urgent desperation of the previous night. This was a kiss of commitment, of shared trauma, and of enduring love. "When I was at the bank, I wasn't just fighting for the kids," he confessed, his voice rough against my ear. "I was fighting to get back to you. I knew I couldn't face the future without you by my side." "You won't have to," I promised, looking up at his intense blue eyes. We solidified our relationship not with grand words, but with the quiet exchange of a future commitment, sealed by the life we had saved and the darkness we had overcome. We went upstairs, back to the loft, the main room that was now our room. The storm outside our walls was still raging, but inside, by the flickering light of the low-wattage bulb he had installed, we had built a sanctuary. We had found home, not in the walls of a cabin, but in the heart of the man who had waited for me in the end of the world. We slept together, Not just lovers but two survivors, side by side, finally safe. The night was cold, the future uncertain, but we were ready. We had everything we needed: competence, community, and the fierce, undeniable love that had finally saved us all.